Hi everyone, I'm Allison. Thank you for joining me for Where I'm From 208 with Suzanne. What have you been reading? I read The Emperor of Gladness by Ocean Vuong. It's a novel, but if you've read his memoir On Earth We're Briefly Gorgeous, I think you'll feel some of the similarities. Obviously, his book, and I appreciated him writing about people who don't get written off about very often, people who are just living their lives. Hi, Suzanne, how are you?
I'm great. How are you?
I'm good. Look at your bookshelves. Those are really nice.
Thank you. My husband built them for me.
Oh,
I
that's a
know.
that's a love. That's I don't really love languages are kind of ick, but that is that would be my language. I love that.
Yeah, yeah.
That's amazing. Um, yeah, so I think it's really cool that you're joining me because you have a book coming out in, is it 2026 about writing?
Yeah,
Yeah.
I do. It's called 52 Writing Prompts,
Hmm.
Inspiration for the Creative Writer, and it's based on my Substack newsletter.
Yeah.
Um, but it's really different from that. It's arranged by theme,
Hmm.
so it's a little different. It's multi-genre, and I've got 36 contemporary writers, essays, poems, stories that I've made writing prompts out of their work.
Yeah.
So, yeah, so I'm really excited. It's coming out next fall.
I mean, I think it's a wonderful thing because I think when we're stuck, sometimes a prompt can help us. And it doesn't mean we'll like use it in some way we understand in the moment, but I think it's just, I think it can be really wonderful. This prompt obviously has changed my life. And it's just nice to not feel like helpless when you are having a hard time
Yeah,
creating.
yeah, and I think too, like, no surprise for the writer, no surprise for the reader. And sometimes when you use a writing prompt, you are surprised because
Yeah,
you wouldn't have
for
come
sure.
up with that. And so then, you create something that would be delightful for a reader too.
Yes. And
Yeah.
have you used these in your teaching, or are there some that you haven't, or what was the like creation
So,
behind it?
yeah, so I mean, everything from this book basically came from my like 30 years of teaching in
Hmm.
college. And a lot of these prompts I've used, but some of them, so as I said, I have like these, examples. And so a lot of the examples, I have taught and I have
Hmm.
used like the prompts that I came up with, but
Hmm.
some of them were new to me. And so I just created writing prompts based off the reading. Um,
That's so cool.
so there's actually more than 52 prompts. There's 77 prompts, but
Oh, wow.
math is not my strong suit.
And did 52 just also because the weeks
Well, right.
feels.
So, yeah. So when I started the Substack, my idea was I would just send out a writing prompt a week
Mhm,
for a
mhm.
year and be done.
Yeah.
And that was 4 years ago.
Yeah.
And so now I don't send out weekly prompts. I send them out like two a month, usually
Yeah.
themed prompts. And so some of the prompts I've used are in the book,
Hmm.
but some are not. I mean, there's 151 now
Wow.
writing prompts that I've sent out. Yeah.
That is very cool.
Yeah.
Um, Congratulations. Writing a book is a big deal of any kind. So, congratulations.
Thank
And
you.
you've written so many wonderful books, and I realize I should have them here because I was like, I'm missing something, and I'm missing your books because I've read Bad Tourist and Animal Bodies, and they're beautiful, and the covers are beautiful, and
Thank you.
I'm not, I just bring the book I've been reading, and I forgot the other books.
That's okay.
Um, but I recommend them. Um, so are you ready to read your poem, Suzanne?
I am. I
Okay,
am. Yeah, and I want to thank you for this prompt because it's super fun.
good.
And I haven't written a poem in a really long time, so it was a fun thing to do.
Oh, good.
All right. Where I'm from. I'm from the gasoline-soaked asphalt, shimmering and rainbowed in the Santa Anas, and from sepia beauty queen snapshots and scuffed white pumps, frosted pink lipstick, and leopard-print bikinis. I'm from depressive black holes, Winston smoke-filled VW bugs, and the knife-edged burn of Jim Beam. I'm from Mrs. Sheets swimming through chlorine-filled nights in a kidney-shaped aquamarine pool, and the second-rate actors walking twin Samoyeds while they wait for callbacks. I'm from single mothers making this month's rent by entertaining the local police while we listen at the window. I'm from the dried up Los Angeles River, strangled by a concrete wash, and meat-loaf Tuesdays and McDonald Saturdays and tinseled holidays. I'm from yard sales to get by. There goes mother's favorite coat, and dead rats and dog shit in the ivy. I'm from dandelions clamoring from concrete cracks, ladybugs eating aphids, and boxed roly-polies under a pink satin twin bed. I'm from roller skating parties, tube tops, and forbidden blue eyeshadow. From Truth or Dare, from mixtapes, MTV videos, and Bartles and James wine coolers. I'm from the Botsteins, whose name disappeared during the war. And from Grandmother Smith, who drowned kittens, and Grandfather, who wanted a kiss on the lips every New Year's Eve. I'm from Hannah, the grandmother I have never met, who left her husband and then burned up in a plane crash on her way home from being with her lover in Tijuana. I'm from family stories, secrets and lies, from just get over it, and you must never tell anyone this.
Thank you, Suzanne. So much of that resonates with me because we are not so far apart in age and we both grew up in Southern California. And
Yeah.
so just like all of those things make me laugh and things that I haven't necessarily thought of in a while, but the list is almost the entire poem. It's like, oh, I remember that and that and that. So it's thank you for taking me down memory lane. And I remember the first time somebody told me they called a roly-poly a pill bug, and I thought that's very odd. Why would you do that?
Right.
They're
Because
roly-polies.
regional, right? Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. Um, so what was, because you don't live here anymore and haven't lived here in a very long time. So what was it like for you revisiting this?
Well, it was interesting because when I looked at this prompt and I thought, well, where am I from? I mean, I feel very much from Tahoe, which is where I've been living for 25 years.
Right.
And the Sierra Nevada feels very
Mhm.
much like home. But I grew up in LA, like in what my dad used to call the concrete jungle, right? I
Yeah.
mean, I grew up in Sherman Oaks and in an apartment, a tiny little apartment.
Hmm.
And so I just sort of started with that and thought, well, that's where I'm originally from. So we'll see
Hmm.
where that goes. And if it doesn't go anywhere, then I'll start one from
Hmm.
Tahoe, which would be really different, right?
Yes.
And it could go lots of directions. Like this time of year, right? Everybody's afraid of forest fires. So
Yeah.
probably I'd be from, watching the AQI and watching watch
Yeah.
duty to see if there's any fires in the region.
Hmm.
And so who knows where it would go. But
Hmm.
I do feel from here now, though.
Yeah. I've said it so many times on here, but Robin Wall Kimmerer, when she talks about that in braiding sweetgrass, like when we become, when the plants and the place like become our friends and they're no longer foreign, then we are sort of from that place. And that really resonated with me because when I have moved other places, I was like, what is all of, obviously the people and the customs are different, but also so are the trees and the topography and
Right,
flowers and everything else and the
right. And
weather.
yeah, I think writers and scientists have in common that we both, our jobs are to pay attention and to
Hmm.
observe.
Hmm.
And I mean, I have a degree in biology, so I have a background in science as well. But like it blows my mind when I'm out hiking with somebody who's lived here for 20 years and doesn't know the names of the trees and the plants.
Yeah.
Because it's my job to know,
Yeah.
right? Like I can't
Hmm.
write about this place without knowing specifically that that's a white fir out my window,
Hmm.
right?
Hmm.
And so I think that we share that with the sciences in sort of our close observation of things, so that we can name them correctly in our work.
Yeah, and actually, my last poem, she asked me, "Oh, do you miss seasons? Living where you do?" And I said, "Well, I don't. I mean, there are seasons. I know to other people it doesn't look like it, but to me, there are. The way the quality of the air changes, like you say, fire season. It's different, but there's a
Yeah,
rhythm to living
yeah.
anywhere.
Well,
It's not always the same."
yeah, so I just went, one of my former students wrote a book called Burnt. It's a
Mm.
memoir about fighting fire. It's awesome. Everybody
Mhm.
should check it out. And I just went to a talk that she gave last night. And one of the things she said that I thought was so interesting is that they don't call it fire season anymore.
What
They
do they
call
call
it
it?
peak season,
Oh, right.
because
Yeah.
like obviously the Palisades fire was like in
Right.
January,
Yeah.
right? The
Yeah.
Paradise fire was in November. So
Yeah.
it's always fire season now. We just
Yeah.
have peak season. So I thought
We
that was really
definitely have peak season. That is,
mm,
it was,
yeah,
I think that's part of the reason those fires, the Palisades and Eaton, I, I think they felt particularly disorienting because we all thought, okay, we're safe.
right, right. But there was record low rain that
Yeah.
year. So
Yeah. Which there is, sadly, more
yeah.
than once.
Right.
So uh yeah, I would should probably read that book, but it just like makes me hot thinking about it because just fires are so a part of our lives and also
Yeah.
um terrifying. So I also was struck by the last line of your poem about not telling anyone because that's something you talk about in your work as well when
Yeah.
you're writing memoir. And so it's interesting that you returned there in your poem because it feels like that was probably a struggle in your writing process. Do you feel like that's true?
Yeah, I mean, first of all, I came from a family with an alcoholic dad. And so if you have an alcoholic in your family, there's always
Yeah.
going to be secrets,
Yeah.
right?
Hmm.
And so part of what I needed to keep secret, what my parents asked me to keep secret was that my dad drank. So like my older sisters who are 17 and 20 years older than me didn't know that he was drinking. They thought he had
Hmm.
stopped. So when I was a little girl, my parents would be like, okay, remember, daddy doesn't drink. And it was even before I understood what that meant or what, but
Hmm.
I knew it was something I needed to keep secret.
Hmm.
And so my mother was British and she was very closed lip about things, as that culture tends to be.
Hmm.
And she was all about keeping secrets. Nobody knew how old she was. She always lied about her age. She lied about all kinds of things.
Hmm.
And she kept my dad's drinking a secret, so she enabled him to you know keep going with that. And so growing up that way, I realized that I didn't want to keep things secret, right? Because
Hmm.
every time you keep a secret, it's shameful. You feel ashamed.
Yeah.
And so when I first started writing, I actually started with poetry because I
Hmm.
wasn't ready for people to know that the things I was writing about were true, right? And
Yeah.
the contract with the reader in poetry is like, it could be true, it might not be true.
Hmm.
And so I wrote 4 books of poems,
Hmm.
and before I ever wrote a memoir. And it was sort of a way to obfuscate the truth because I had been told to keep things secret. As my mom got older, and I asked her to fill journals with her own
Hmm.
stories, and she did. And then some of those stories entered my work. I had family who was very upset with me about
Hmm.
talking about my grandparents.
Hmm.
Um, so, it is something I think all of us as writers have to confront at some point, is this sort of idea that like we're gonna we're gonna tell this truth and we're gonna tell stories that people are not gonna want us to tell. So yeah, it's something I'm constantly keeps coming up.
Yeah. I mean, I think Jane Wong writes about that in her memoir, the poet Jane and novelist Jane Wong, or memoirist. She writes about that, how it's such a different experience writing a memoir as opposed to a poem because of the obfuscation and also the detail, right? I mean, you can't just be like, oh, and then this happened, moving on. I mean, you have to dig in.
Right.
Um, and that can be hard. And I didn't write, I mean, I wrote some poetry, but I wrote a lot of like screenplays. That's how I was. I went to film school and I was in the business and I did that. And that was my way of not writing about myself while writing about myself. And it's interesting how many of us have done that in some way. And people would say like, oh, you should write about yourself. And I'd think, ugh, I don't want to do that. That seems really hard. And I have enough complications with my family. I don't need to be doing all that. Um, but like you say, there is real shame associated with keeping secret and keeping secrets. And I think, the shame, and I just said this recently to somebody, like writing about it has really helped me not help me understand the shame is not mine.
Right. Right. And and that's the thing too, right? Is that like the things that we're so often ashamed of
Hmm.
are not our fault,
No.
right?
Mm-mm.
Like it's not my fault that my dad was an alcoholic.
No.
It's not my fault that, I mean, a lot of times people are ashamed of like illness,
Mhm.
right? Or the way their
Especially
bodies
right now.
look. Yeah.
Hmm.
And and that's it's not like our fault, anything we did, right?
Mhm.
So it doesn't, the shame should not belong to us.
Yeah. And
Um,
writing about it really helped me. And I was saying to this person who was just starting to submit, like I would, when I first started submitting things, I would actually say to myself when I was submitting, this shame is not mine. Submit, because I needed to just kind of let myself know, like, okay, people are going to read this. And I think it gets easier. It's gotten easier for me, but also, so has just aging and healing. And like, I'm also doing those things simultaneously with the
yeah,
writing.
yeah. But it is true. Once you write it and people read it, it's sort of you have a different relationship with it
Yeah.
and a different relationship with shame for sure. You
Yeah,
know,
well, and I don't know what your experience has been like with your books, but I think from a lot of people I've talked to, you're surprised sometimes, like, oh, people aren't reading this the way that I have been carrying it.
hmm
They're reading it like, oh, that's terrible. What happened to you? And you're like, wait, but but I'm also bad. And they're like, no, that's not what I'm taking away from this.
Right, right. I mean, I tell students all the time. They think, "Oh, I did these terrible things."
Yeah.
It's like once they tell me what they are, I'm like, "That's really nothing." Like everybody
Right.
does that, right?
Right. Hmm.
And so I think that that's true too. It's like it makes you feel less alone. And
Hmm.
I wrote an essay about having an abortion, and it
Hmm.
took me a really long time to write the essay.
Sure.
The essay is called "The Same Story." You can find it on the internet. It's also in Animal Bodies.
Hmm.
And it's interesting because I wasn't sure how that would, how people would respond to
Hmm.
that, especially because it's online, so it's,
Hmm.
out there. And I have had like more like fan mail for that
Hmm.
essay
Hmm.
than for anything else I've written, and men have written to me because their girlfriend or whatever got an abortion, and
Hmm.
they were like, "Wow, like this really was helpful to me." And so it makes me really glad, right, that
Yeah.
I put it out there.
Yeah.
I have gotten some weird stuff, including a letter in the mail that
Okay,
was
that's weird.
like to my house, like, right?
Right.
And
Yeah.
it was, it looked like a little kid's writing. And it was
Hmm.
like, I hope you die alone. And I
Oh,
was like,
jeez.
okay. Don't we all die alone at some point, at some level? But anyway, so of course I've had that response too. Um,
Yeah.
but
Finding
most,
your home
you know,
address is so intentionally creepy.
it is creepy. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, that's the point. And I mean, I'm happy you can laugh about it. And I think you and others, I feel like you have said this, but I definitely have seen online people saying like, this response to me is, I mean, it's validating. I'm saying something that is worthwhile, obviously, because you are
Right.
having a response. And I
Yes.
think that's so empowering because obviously the intention is not to make you feel worthwhile. The intention is to try to get you to shut up. So I appreciate that a lot because sometimes it's hard.
Yeah. I also think that the response is not about my work at all. Like
Right.
when I
Right.
read, when I read reviews that of some of my books that people didn't like or whatever,
Mhm.
it's so obviously not about me.
Right.
Right? It's so
Yep.
obviously about the person who's writing the
Yep.
review. And I think good memoir does that, right? It's a mirror.
Hmm. Hmm.
And the mirror gets held up to the reader, and sometimes the reader doesn't like what they see, and then they
Hmm.
blame the writer for bringing that out.
Hmm.
um,
Well, that's a really healthy perspective, Suzanne. I appreciate that. I feel that way I don't leave bad reviews. I think it's a really interesting phenomenon. People who feel the need to really shit on other people's work. It's like, what are you? Because to me, I know that someone really poured their heart and soul into this
right,
piece of work, even if it's not for me or it's just like, I don't need to go there. I don't need to do that.
agreed. I mean, I completely agree, and I think I don't know where it comes from, and I think that anonymity of the
Yes, for
internet,
sure.
right, and of
Yes.
Goodreads or whatever, allows people to do
Hmm.
that. But I think a lot of it, actually, I think a lot of it comes from jealousy.
Yeah, like
I
actually doing
do.
the thing.
Right, like
Mhm.
you might not like my book, but I wrote one,
That's
you
right. You've
know?
written more than one. Hmm.
And well, yeah. But you know what I mean? Like
Yeah,
writing a book is a big deal and it's a
it
huge
is.
accomplishment. And
Yes.
I always tell people like, don't even think about the publishing part of it. The you did your part. You wrote
Mhm.
a book And
Mhm.
you know how many people, and I'm sure you get this too, you go to a party, whatever, what do you do? And I'm like, oh no, why you ask? Why don't you just ask me? Why don't you just ask me what I do for fun? We can talk about hiking and skiing. And I'll say, oh, I'm a writer. Well,
Mhm.
what do you write? I
Mhm.
write books. And then,
Mhm.
of course, I always, like 90% of the time I get, oh, I'm thinking about writing a book.
Mhm.
I'd like to write a book. And I'm like, you should
Mhm.
totally write a book.
For sure. I always say that.
But it's hard to write a book. It's
Yeah.
hard to finish a book.
Well, and sometimes don't you feel like asking why? Why? Is there a like, because I recently had someone say, oh, I think I'm going to do that to make money. And I thought, oh, don't do that.
Well, you're not going to make any money, right?
Don't do that.
Yeah,
That's not a solid plan. I know a writer who makes a lot of money and kudos to them, but like they are a unicorn.
right. Well, and and in my poem, like I wrote this poem, and then I thought, oh yeah, I had a pretty good childhood, but it makes it sound really shitty.
It's hard.
I was really poor. We were really poor. We had
Mhm.
rented furniture. Like
Yeah.
going out to McDonald's was a huge deal. We didn't have money for vacations. Um, and I was thinking about it, and we did have like, sales of my mom's clothes,
Yeah, that was really poignant
and
memory.
it's because my dad was a writer, so he made no money. I mean, honestly, my mother
Right.
worked in retail.
Mhm.
Um, she left school at 15, so didn't even have a high school degree. My
Mhm.
dad had a high school degree, but like I'm a first generation college, student, and and I mean, I'm glad he was a writer, and he did make money for a little while because he was a head writer for As the World Turns for a little while,
Mhm. Yeah.
um, which enabled us to move and stuff like that and buy a condo. But
Hmm.
for most of it, we were really poor, and it's because
Hmm.
writers don't make any money.
Yeah, and when you do,
Yeah,
and usually often it's a moment. It's
yeah,
not a career
yeah,
long thing.
right.
So yeah, it's hard being a person who creates, but I also feel like it's essential, and
It,
and I'm
it's
very grateful.
it's really lucky. Like
Yeah.
I always hear when I hear about like bad things happening to friends who aren't writers, I'm like, oh my God, and they're not a write they can't even write about it. Like at least when bad things happen to us, it's like, oh well, I I have a friend Camille who calls me mercenary because every time she tells me some bad thing, I'm like, oh,
Yeah.
we gotta write about that, right? Like, and yeah, I do make books out of
Mm,
unfortunate things. So
mm,
yeah.
yeah. No,
So
it's,
it's
I
lucky.
mean, it's a powerful thing to be
Yeah.
able to make meaning. It's not necessary. Everyone doesn't have to do it. You don't have to do it, everybody, but it can feel really good to
Yeah.
make meaning of something.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, well, anything else, Suzanne, before we wrap up? This has flown by.
I don't think so.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well,
Yeah.
this was a pleasure. I'm so glad this worked out, and I'm happy to have an excuse to talk to you. So, thank
Yeah,
you
no,
for taking
it's
the
great.
time.
And thank you for doing this, and thank you for the writing prompt. And I'm going to steal it for my
Hmm.
in the coming months for my 52 writing prompts Substack.
Yeah, I
It's
mean,
so
just credit
awesome.
Fred first. He's the guy who made it,
I
and
will.
he,
I'll,
and I just am, I was very emotional talking to him about, it was about 12 poems ago now. Like, he just did it because he felt moved, and then
mhm,
he shared it on his blog, and it's everywhere now. And I just feel like Georgella and his generosity, it's just really beautiful.
mhm. Yeah. Yeah. I loved it. So
Yeah.
thank you so much.
Oh, thank you. Okay, bye, Suzanne.
Have a great day. Okay,
You
bye.
too.